Headlights slice through the whiteout on Vermont's Route 9, and Ethan Walker's 2012 Ford F-150 stops inches from a barefoot little girl in the center line. He pulls her into the heat, wraps her tight, and hears her whisper, "I can't find Mom." Rachel said, "Hide." Minutes later in Pine Ridge, her photo is everywhere. She's Victoria Cross's daughter, and the rescue turns into a national storm. Then the nanny is found executed, and Ethan realizes this child wasn't lost. She was protected. So what did Lily see that powerful people need erased? Like and subscribe and tell me, where are you watching from? Ethan didn't see her until the last possible second. His 2012 Ford F-150 skidded sideways, tires crunching over a fresh sheet of black ice, as the headlights caught something impossibly small standing dead center on Route 9. For a flash of a second, his brain told him it was an animal, maybe a deer or a dog caught in the snow. Then the outline became unmistakable. Bare feet, skinny arms, tangled hair barely covering her face, and Ethan's stomach plunged. He slammed the brakes, the truck jerking with a groan, stopping barely a foot away from her. The child didn't move. She just stared, frozen not from fear, but from cold. Ethan threw the door open and bolted out, sinking up to his shins in snow as he reached her. She didn't flinch, even when he wrapped her in his coat. Her lips were blue. He scooped her up and rushed back to the cab, blasting the heat before even closing the door properly. His fingers fumbled with the seatbelt, but her weight was too light, her body limp. Hey, stay with me," he said, more command than plea. "What's your name?" It took a few seconds, then a small, cracked voice. "Lily." The syllable nearly dissolved in the air. Once he had her in the truck, Ethan reached behind the seat for the Army-issue blanket he always kept from his time stationed in Kandahar, not for sentimental reasons, but because Vermont nights were unforgiving. He wrapped her up tight, tucking her in like he used to do with Caleb back when his son still had nightmares about his mother leaving. Ethan noticed the blood on Lily's foot, raw patches torn by ice, and he winced. "Jesus," he muttered, checking the glove compartment for anything useful. Only an old pack of hand warmers, half a roll of gauze, and a mini bottle of Advil. He pulled out his phone, an older iPhone SE, cracked screen and all, and had 0 bars. Of course. They were about 15 miles from Pine Ridge, maybe 20 minutes in weather like this. He glanced at Lily, who stared blankly at the dashboard like she didn't understand what was happening. "I'm gonna get you somewhere warm," he said, starting the engine. "You just hang on, all right?" She didn't answer, but when the truck pulled back onto the road, her small hand reached out and gripped the frayed cuff of his sleeve like it was a rope tethering her to the world. Driving through the blizzard meant crawling. The windshield wipers squeaked against frost, and the defroster fought to keep a patch clear enough to see. Ethan stayed under 30, which was dangerously slow on a highway, but felt too fast with her in the car. Every few minutes he'd glance over to make sure Lily was still breathing. Her eyes blinked slow and heavy, and once she leaned sideways toward the heat vent and whispered something. He turned the music down and asked her to repeat. "Can't find Mom," she said again, voice quieter this time. Her head tilted down, forehead pressing into the coat he'd given her. "Rachel said to hide." The name hung in the air like fog. "Who's Rachel?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone soft. She didn't respond. He saw her fingers curl into a fist around a small object, something like a keychain, plastic and pink. Maybe a doll's accessory. He didn't press her. There was something about the way she gripped it that told him it wasn't just a toy. It was proof of something, of someone. As they passed the turnoff to Brattleboro, Ethan briefly considered heading toward the hospital there, Brattleboro Memorial. But the roads were worse in that direction, and with no signal and a half tank of gas, he wasn't about to get stranded. Pine Ridge had a small clinic on Elm Street near the post office. He'd been there once for Caleb's bronchitis, back when the boy was 6, and Ethan still thought he'd figure out how to be a father. He looked down again and saw Lily's eyes were closed. Panic surged. "Lily?" he said sharply, tapping her shoulder. She stirred, murmured something incomprehensible, and then, suddenly, Rachel said people were coming. Her tone this time was different, not scared, knowing, like she understood something she couldn't explain. Ethan clenched the steering wheel. "Do you know who? Who was coming?" She didn't answer, just wrapped herself tighter in the blanket and stared straight ahead. Her silence was not emptiness. It was survival. 15 minutes later, the glowing signs of Pine Ridge emerged through the snow like a slow dream. The Exxon station at the edge of town was still open, and Ethan pulled in just long enough to borrow their landline. Inside, the cashier, a woman in her 50s wearing a UVM Catamounts hoodie, stared at him as he cradled the bundle in his arms. "She yours?" she asked, half guarded, half suspicious. "Found her on Route 9, Ethan said. "Alone. No shoes." He watched her expression change from doubt to horror in real time. "Jesus Christ, you call 911? "That's what I'm doing." He gave them the basics, repeating Lily's name softly each time to keep her present. The dispatcher told him to go straight to the Pine Ridge Police Department on Maple Street. Small town, small force, but they'd alert the FBI if the girl matched any missing child report. Ethan didn't wait for pleasantries. Back in the truck, Lily whispered again. "Rachel told me not to talk to them." To who?" he asked. She didn't say, she just reached out and touched the glove box. "She put something there," she murmured. Ethan opened it and found nothing but loose papers, a tire gauge, and a granola bar from last spring. He kept driving, but something had changed. Not in the weather, it still raged, thick and relentless, but in the weight of what he was carrying. Lily wasn't just lost, she was running. From something, from someone. And someone had tried to protect her. Maybe Rachel was still out there, or maybe not. Ethan didn't know, but the girl next to him wasn't just scared, she was taught to be. That realization stung deeper than the frost on his fingers. When the lights of the police station finally came into view, he parked out front and turned to her. "I'm going to take you inside now. It's safe, all right?" She didn't respond, but before he opened the door, her hand reached again for his sleeve and tugged, just once. That single gesture, the unspoken need in it, anchored something inside Ethan that hadn't felt solid in years. As he stepped out into the storm, carrying her close, he made a quiet vow. Whatever this girl had been through, whatever she'd seen, it would not end in silence. Not this time. The Pine Ridge Police Department was not built for moments like this. It was a low brick building with a single public counter, 2 holding cells that rarely saw use, and a break room that smelled permanently of burnt coffee. Now it felt crowded with urgency. Lily sat on a vinyl chair near the heater, wrapped in a department-issued blanket, her feet bandaged by a paramedic from the local fire station. Ethan stood a few feet away, answering the same questions again and again. "Name, address, where did you find her? Did she say anything else?" Every officer within earshot kept glancing at their phones, not discreetly. Notifications kept lighting up screens, photos spreading fast. A child's face with the caption, "Missing, 5 years old, last seen in New York City." When one officer finally said the name out loud, Victoria Cross, the room changed, conversations lowered, someone swore quietly. This was no longer a small-town problem. Lily looked up at Ethan when she heard raised voices, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. He crouched beside her and said nothing, just nodded, the way you do when words would make it worse. The arrival didn't come with ceremony inside the building, no announcement, no warning, just a sudden shift in posture among the officers when the call came in. Helicopter inbound, private. The chief stepped away to take it, his voice clipped, respectful in a way Ethan hadn't heard before. When Victoria Cross entered the station minutes later, flanked by 2 men in dark coats who did not identify themselves, she moved like someone used to controlling rooms without asking permission. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her coat still marked with melting snow, and her eyes scanned until they landed on Lily. The moment cracked something in her composure. She crossed the floor fast, breath hitching, but Lily didn't run to her. Lily turned first toward Ethan, small hand gripping his sleeve like it had in the truck. That hesitation lasted only a second, but it was enough. Victoria noticed. Her arms closed around her daughter, tight and urgent, murmuring Lily's name over and over while her eyes stayed open, alert. When she finally looked at Ethan, she smiled, precise and practiced. "Thank you," she said, already steady. "We'll take it from here." It wasn't dismissal, but it was close. The gratitude that followed felt transactional. Victoria shook hands with the chief, spoke calmly about medical care, security, next steps. She mentioned Boston Children's Hospital, said her people would handle transport. She never once asked Ethan how Lily had been found, only confirmed timelines, as if checking boxes. When Lily was guided to a nearby room for evaluation, Victoria followed, heels clicking sharply, then stopped at the door and turned back. "This has been traumatic," she said, her tone smooth. "For everyone." Ethan nodded, unsure what response was expected. It was only after that, when officers returned with printed reports and one of them hesitated, that the narrative shifted. Rachel, the nanny, had taken Lily without authorization. There were messages, bank irregularities, suspicions of ransom. Victoria said it calmly, almost regretfully. "She betrayed us," she said. Ethan felt Lily stiffen beside him at the word betrayed. He remembered her voice in the truck, Rachel said to hide. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Some stories arrive already finished. This one felt forced into shape. The news came less than an hour later. A detective stepped into the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear, his face draining of color as he listened. When he hung up, he didn't speak immediately. "Rachel has been found," he finally said. "Outside Albany, shot." The word executed was not used, but it hung there anyway. Victoria closed her eyes, a hand briefly covering her mouth, grief appearing exactly where it should. Lily looked up at Ethan again, confusion clouding her face. "She told me to wait," Lily whispered. "She said she'd come back." Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to correct the shape the story was taking, but he was already being edged out of the frame. Officers moved with renewed urgency, voices turning official, procedural. Victoria was already on the phone, speaking softly but firmly, asking for privacy, for discretion. The room tilted. Ethan realized that whatever truth Rachel had died for was already being buried under efficiency. When Ethan was finally asked to give a formal statement, it was brief and oddly impersonal. A young officer typed while Ethan spoke, barely looking up. Dates, times, distances, no space for instinct or fear, or the way Lily had clung to him like she knew he would not let go. He mentioned what Lily said about hiding. It was noted, not discussed. When he finished, Victoria stood and approached him once more. Up close, she smelled faintly of expensive soap and winter air. "You did the right thing," she said. "I appreciate that." She paused, then added, "This will all be handled now." It sounded like reassurance. It also sounded like a boundary. Lily was led away shortly after, bundled in another coat, a small medical bracelet now on her wrist. She turned once, looked back at Ethan and lifted her hand in a small, uncertain wave. He raised his own, helpless. As the doors closed behind her, Ethan understood something with cold clarity. Lily's fear had never been about being lost. It had been about being found by the wrong people. It was Agent Sophia Martinez who asked Ethan to meet her off the record, away from the station, at a cafe called Blackbird's Nest in Montpelier, just off State Street. The kind of place where no one asked questions and the barista knew half the regulars by name. They sat in the back near the restroom door, next to a shelf of used books for sale. Martinez picked a spot deliberately quiet. Ethan didn't drink the coffee she ordered for him. He just sat there, jaw tight, fingers tapping the side of the mug. Rachel wasn't just the nanny, Martinez said, not dramatically but directly. She came to us 3 weeks before the disappearance. She had data, logs. She was preparing to go public, but she knew she wouldn't make it that far. Ethan blinked slowly, processing each word like it was another layer of snow on his windshield. Data on what? He asked, though deep down he already knew. Cross technologies, Martinez said, her voice low. They were embedding digital backdoors into their products, selling access to foreign governments, some of them adversarial. Rachel had proof. Ethan stared at the sugar jar, then at her. And now she's dead. Martinez didn't flinch. Yes. The name Rachel had whispered in the car, the way Lily had clung to it, all of it now took on the weight of something unspeakably brave and fatal. Martinez explained that Rachel had tried to move through internal channels. She had approached a journalist from the Boston Globe, had met twice in secret with an FBI contact in Worcester. The last file she sent, an encrypted package marked LCI's only.zip, never made it. Martinez suspected it was intercepted. We can't prove it, though, she said. Not yet. Everything Rachel had was either deleted or redirected. She must have realized too late. Ethan felt rage swell in his chest, but what came out was quieter. Lily. She said she saw things. Heard Rachel on the phone. Remembered names. Martinez nodded. Which makes her a liability. Even if she doesn't fully understand it. Ethan rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. Victoria knows all this? Martinez gave him a look. Victoria controls all of this. That's the problem. The table between them felt smaller than it had a moment ago. Why tell me? He asked. Because you're the only one who seems to give a damn about what really happened. The conversation with Martinez lit something inside Ethan that he couldn't put out. Back at home in Middlebury, he tried to return to routine, picking up his son Caleb from soccer practice at Addison Central School, making boxed mac and cheese for dinner, half listening to evening news. But it was like living with a splinter under his skin. He looked up the Cross Technologies public office in Burlington and parked outside for 2 hours without getting out of the car. When he finally did, he left a message with the front desk asking for Victoria Cross. He didn't expect an answer. She called him the next morning. No assistance, no filtered lines, just her voice, crisp and calm. Let's meet, she said. They met at the Hotel Vermont, in a suite that smelled of fresh lilies and cost more per night than Ethan's mortgage. She poured him a drink before he could refuse. You did something extraordinary, she said, and I want you to know that hasn't gone unnoticed. He sipped water instead. You want me to disappear? She smiled politely. Of course not. Then she slid a folder across the glass table. Inside was a signed check, $500,000. Ethan stared at it for a long time. There's no contract? He asked, voice flat. You don't need one, Victoria replied. It's a gesture for your silence, yes, but also for your effort. Ethan leaned back, the check still on the table. Rachel died trying to do the right thing. Victoria's face didn't change. Rachel made mistakes. He stood. So did I. I saved your daughter thinking she was in danger. Now I wonder if I handed her back into it. She followed him to the door. You think this makes you noble, Ethan? Turning down money doesn't make you right. It just makes you smaller in the game you're trying to fight. He looked back at her once before leaving. If it means I don't lose sleep, I'm okay being small. When he got home, the envelope was still in his coat pocket. He burned it in the fire pit behind his house, while Caleb played Minecraft in the living room. That night, he didn't sleep. Neither did he the next. He started locking the doors twice, checking the windows, memorizing license plates of cars parked too long near his driveway. Somewhere inside, he knew that refusing the check didn't make him safe. It just made him a loose thread. Weeks passed, then months. The story faded from the national spotlight. Victoria Cross made appearances on Good Morning America, gave interviews to Forbes, accepted an award at the Tech Impact Summit in D.C. Rachel's name came up only once, buried in an op-ed as a disgruntled employee with a history of instability. Ethan kept watching, hoping for something to break open, but nothing did. The FBI never called again. Martinez went silent. Ethan kept a copy of Rachel's photo, just one, tucked into an old paperback of all the pretty horses he used to read on deployment. Not as a shrine, but as a reminder of Lily, of what someone tried to warn them about. Then, in late March, a plain white envelope arrived without a return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a drawing, crayon lines clumsy and bright, a blue truck, two stick figures holding hands under white specks that looked like falling snow. On the back, in blocky letters, it read, Ethan. He stared at it for a long time, sitting at the kitchen table, the smell of reheated lasagna still in the air. Caleb walked in and asked, "Who's that from?" Ethan didn't answer. He just smiled a little and said, "A friend." He placed the drawing inside the wooden box where he kept his VA paperwork, next to a photograph of Caleb as a baby and a letter he never sent to his ex-wife. That box had always been a storage of things unsaid, unresolved, unclaimed. This drawing didn't belong there because it was unfinished, but that made it exactly right. Ethan sat on the porch as the sun set behind the sugar maples and thought about Lily, how she had trusted him without reason, how Rachel had died trying to protect something purer than justice. There would be no trial, no news expose, no headline that told the truth, but in his house, on his terms, there would be memory. There would be space for what really happened. He folded the drawing once more, carefully, and promised himself something he wouldn't need to write down. If Lily ever came looking for the truth, if one day the world tried to rewrite her again, she would have someone who remembered exactly how it began, even if no one else did. Even if it cost him more than he knew how to carry, because that was the real price of silence, knowing and choosing not to forget. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Take Victoria Cross's $500,000 and walk away, or risk everything to protect the truth Lily couldn't even say out loud? Tell me in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story and why? If you want more intense, emotional thrillers where one small choice changes everything, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.